Welcome back to the Turbo Branding Show. I'm your host, Sue Kirchner, here to help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a seasoned brand builder has to rebuild their own brand from scratch, you are going to love this conversation. My guest today is Liz Brohan, someone who spent more than 25 years as CEO of one of the country's premier B2B marketing agencies. Then an industry boom she never saw coming turned her agency's name into a punchline and a growth liability. She had to do what every smart business owner eventually must: recognize when your brand is working against you and then have the courage to rebuild it. What she landed on tells you everything about how she thinks. The new name was strategic, intentional, and clever enough to make people stop and ask, what does that mean? Which led to a conversation where she got to tell her brand story. And the brand she built was powerful enough that she was ultimately able to sell her company. So Liz, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks, Sue. I'm very happy to be here. This will be fun talking about this today. It's got some comedic notes to it, as you kind of mentioned.
We love comedic notes, right? But yeah, I can't wait to talk about the rebranding process with a fellow brand builder, as well as how you found the right buyer for your agency, because I know that was important to you. But first,
Absolutely.
let me give my listeners a little bit more background and details that I skipped at the beginning. But as I alluded to, for more than 25 years, Liz was the CEO of CBD Marketing, which rebranded in 2022 as 2.718 Marketing. Liz is recognized as a specialist in brand development, customer acquisition, lead generation, and more. Her deep expertise has helped shape successful marketing strategies for several of the nation's leading brands. And today, she is the host and producer of leading industry podcast entitled B2B No Bull and a renowned women's podcast, Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women. So impressive. And I love those names. Did I miss anything you want me to share?
No, that was wonderful. Thank you.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump in. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us about your professional journey and the why and how behind building an enviable B2B marketing agency.
Absolutely. So I came up on the creative side of the business. I started as a copywriter with what was then the number one direct marketing agency, kind of in the world, but for sure in the US, called Cobbs and Brady, which had many brand changes over the years too because of the partnerships that it developed. After a while, my naivete kind of kicked in, and I thought, well, I've learned almost everything I need to learn about direct marketing. So I decided that maybe it was time to learn a new discipline.
Hmm.
So I was actually hired by, at the time, the number two sales promotion agency in the country. They were called Columbia Advertising. And I'll be honest with you, nobody today, probably none of your listeners go, sales promotion, what's that?
Yeah.
It's now called shopper marketing.
Hmm.
It has morphed entirely. But what Columbia hired me to do was to actually bring direct marketing to store sales.
Oh,
It was a time when CPG companies, and credit card companies were looking to build their own databases, right?
okay.
And so that was a skill from direct marketing that I was able to bring to the table, and get to learn a whole new advertising discipline. So as I went through that journey, eventually I thought to myself, I've watched a lot of folks build their own agencies over the years, and I think I can do that too.
Yeah.
And maybe I even think I can do it better.
Awesome.
So, so I just kind of jumped in. I had worked with a woman at Cobbs and Brady years ago. Her name was Lori Coleman, and Lori Coleman and I partnered up to just kind of found Coleman, Brohan, Davis. And
Okay.
we were very fortunate. We got premier clients to work with us, and we were able to build the brand, even though it kind of sounds like a law firm, right?
Right.
Which is kind of fun because eventually our clients were the ones who started branding us CBD marketing. You know,
Interesting.
they don't want to say
Well,
Coleman Brohan Davis. It's a mouthful.
absolutely.
Yeah, so we went right along with that, and everything we did was, built around the brand CBD marketing. And I'll tell you another bit of a punchline coming up later in
Yeah.
the story is that I created what I considered a unique positioning at the time called Market What's Meaningful,
Hmm.
right? So our journey was to actually partner with those companies that were really marketing meaningful products
Okay.
and understood that to be meaningful, you really needed to be customer centric.
Mm.
So all of that shaped our brand over the years, and we did great for about 20 years.
Okay. Okay. And then what happened, as we know?
You all know what's coming.
Right.
So, of course, the cannabis industry starts coming on pretty strong, and some states decided to, make A, marijuana available for medicinal purposes, but then B, right on the heels of that, they started making it available for recreational purposes.
Mm.
And that's when I probably should have rebranded the company.
Okay.
But who knew that it was going to get so big so fast?
Right.
So, what started to happen was we noticed that our new business efforts were struggling a little bit. They were falling behind, some of the benchmarks that we had always seen.
Okay.
And it turns out that as the cannabis industry kind of took hold and gained traction, large corporations who were the people we were interested in working with were blocking some keywords like CBD, in their corporate email systems.
Mm.
So we come to find out that some of our emails are going directly into spam.
Damn.
They're not
Right.
being seen by the CMOs and the VPs of marketing and the folks that we really wanted to get in front of.
Right.
So that was kind of clue number one that I was already a little behind the eight ball. Then we start hearing stories from our clients, their VPs of marketing, their
Sure.
marketing managers, and their directors of marketing, right? And they go into their boardrooms on a regular basis and start telling the executive team everything that CBD has done for them lately. And the eyebrows go up and the jaws start to drop. And then they've got to backpedal and tell some of the executives who we are, what we do. And it became a little problematic for them. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things we always wanted to do in our work was make sure that we were making heroes out of our clients, making sure that they were successful in the eyes of their bosses.
Right.
And we didn't think that helped the story at
No.
all.
No. When they have to backtrack and defend themselves, you're not making them look like a hero that day. Right.
Exactly right. And to your point, who wants to be the punchline of a joke in the boardroom?
Right. Right. Right.
Nobody. So, okay, I finally saw the light bulb went off.
Yep.
And we immediately, dove in and got, the best of our team together. They were all the best, but, a
Yeah.
smaller team together to help us start the rebranding process.
Okay.
And anyone who's been through this knows it's not easy.
It's not easy at all. Right.
No, what's fun is coming up with names that feel like they fit your positioning, fit your purpose, fit your mission vision. And then the harder part are the URLs available.
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I,
Trademarks, URLs, all of that.
ah, all of that. So that's always going to be a bit of a barrier to success.
Yeah.
And because I had a very special team in place to help us vet all of these names, there were a couple that we absolutely kind of fell in love with right away.
Right.
But, when you start Googling them, there could always be something out there in the universe that makes it not 100% attractive. So we had to back away from some of those.
Right.
But where I think we landed was pretty cool, to the couple of points you made early on in the podcast, that we landed on a name that had a very cool meaning to
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And like you said, it allowed us to tell a really great story about how we were going to help drive business and revenue to all the prospects and the current clients that we were talking to.
Hmm.
So I'll reveal it again, even though
Yes, reveal,
Sue
say
has
the name
mentioned
and
it.
what the meaning is because I love it.
Okay, awesome. So we called ourselves 2.718 marketing. Now I'm hoping all of you just went, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
that's that's the fun part. So 2.718 marketing is actually Euler's number. He's a mathematician,
Okay.
probably over 100 years old now. And he developed a formula with 2.718 in it that actually helped drive exponential growth.
Hmm.
So it's the number whose meaning at its roots is exponential growth.
Yeah.
And to us, that was everything we wanted to do for our clients and to be able to talk to our prospects about.
Yeah.
And because it's relatively unknown, it always gave us an opportunity to kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
And then of course, now Market What's Meaningful had another level of, you know, purpose
Yeah.
for the brand. So we did not have to walk away from that, which I was very pleased about.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
so we went to market as 2.718, and as you might guess, we informed all of our clients
Yeah.
and, then started to get out there in the universe to make sure that prospects knew who we were
Yep.
and that we had a legacy in the business, that we weren't a brand new agency. We were actually in business for 30 plus years,
Yeah.
and that we were, committed to continuing to drive exponential growth for our clients.
Yeah. Well, that's a question I have for you is, because I've worked with a client recently where we were trying to honor the legacy of the original name of a company they had purchased, but really focus on the vision and the new attributes of where the company was going forward. But how did you do that? How were you able to pull some of the, the relevance, the experience, the attributes from CBD marketing into the new brand name so that your existing clients could understand that, oh, this is not 100% new. Don't panic. We're still the great company that we were before. Were there any
Well,
particular communications or process you went through?
absolutely. As brand marketers ourselves and helping our clients do this, when you're going to do it for yourself, you have to make sure that you do it the right way.
Right.
So, some of the things we put in place was research
Yep.
and vetting. We talked to a lot of our current clients and said, what do you think?
Yeah.
You know, and made sure that they were comfortable with it, made
Yep.
sure that they understood the story behind it. So when they took it up the food chain to the executive team or to other people we were working with, like the sales team,
Yep.
absolutely, customer service, another one,
Yep.
that they were going to get it right away.
Yep.
So, you know, a lot of that isn't necessarily quantitative research, but it's definitely qualitative research.
It's
Um,
imperative, right? Because people form relationships with your organization, and you have to honor that and have those discussions to understand where their loyalty and what they absolutely value and love about your existing company.
that is such a great point. And of course, my best assets were our people,
Yeah.
you know, including the leadership team who had developed relationships with our clients, for years and years and years. So, as ambassadors, where we also started was internal branding, right? We crafted the stories. We had folks in the organization articulate those stories in their own words before we even went out to tell other people what we were up to. So, by the time we were ready to kind of pull back the curtain and tell everyone in the world what we were up to, everyone in the organization could tell the stories. And the good news is they could tell it in their own words. So it worked out extremely well. But
Nice.
I will mention that internal branding was a very big part of all of this.
Part of all of it. Yeah.
And even though a lot of us would think that kind of marketing by committee is no way to make decisions, we definitely vetted the name internally.
Okay.
I wanted everybody who worked for us to stay happy
Yeah.
and engaged and love the new brand.
Yeah. Um,
And
just
so
yeah, real quick, how many people did you have in your agency at that time?
we were at about 40.
40.
Yeah,
Nice.
40
Okay.
full-time employees.
Yeah.
Yeah. A robust small agency for sure.
Yeah.
So just having everybody nodding their head like you were just doing just now
Yeah.
was a big comfort,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And and of course, getting their feedback. Did they see any challenges coming? Everybody started, Googling Euler. Were there any
Suddenly we're
skeletons
all
in his?
experts in this mathematician, right?
Well, everybody's more of a skeptic than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that they were just wanting to make sure there were no skeletons in the
Mm,
closet because we knew our clients would do the same thing and probably our prospects, right? They're going to Google
right.
that weird name, right?
Right.
And it's spelled weird and pronounced Euler. It starts with an EU, but it's pronounced Euler.
Euler. Okay.
So that was just some of the vetting that everyone did to make sure that, we were all going to be able to move forward successfully when we actually rebranded the company.
Yeah.
And then, of course, along came all the materials that go with rebranding. So it's never easy,
Yep.
to completely redo your website.
No, it's not
And
easy.
it's not easy, particularly when you're the shoemaker's children. We're busy doing this for other people.
Right.
So our timelines were, a little bit longer than, we had hoped,
Yeah.
even though we all did try to push urgency, which is a big component of what you're trying to achieve, making sure that, okay, your timeline will fit the workload you already have, but it's not going to leave us where by the end of the year, new business efforts are hurting
Okay.
or our clients are still wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
So it took us 6 months.
Hmm.
Now, recently I was talking with a CMO of a very large public corporation,
Yeah.
and they had their name, and then they had three like sister companies, all
Okay.
with different names.
Yeah.
So this large public corporation, with stock symbols and everything, much more complicated than my business, they rebranded themselves in 4 months.
Wow. That is pretty aggressive. Yeah.
I know, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And I told her the same thing. I said, just to get a website up for my company took 6 months. So
Yeah.
I was just amazed, but I took that to heart
Yeah.
that it is good to make sure that your team feels like they're being supported with a
Yeah.
decent timeline, but it never hurts to push. And having a story like that, I
Yeah.
think if a public company can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I love that. So, can we go back to the process that you went through to come up with the name, right? Because I know you mentioned you were trying to, adhere to your core values, there was a lot going into it. So how did you, just so people understand how complex this sometimes can get, how did you frame the brainstorming meeting or, being able
Yes.
to come up with, to direct people to throw ideas out about a potential new name?
Oh, thanks for asking about that because I know everyone who's involved in branding will appreciate that we worked with the end in mind, right?
Okay.
We all knew that we wanted a brand that stood for strength in marketing. So when you back that up, you
Mhm.
start with some brand exercises, right? What are the keywords? So you ask your team and you ask your clients if you had to describe our marketing firm in one word, what would it be?
Yeah.
So then you start to collect all of these words, right?
Yep.
And then you prioritize the top 5, prioritize the top 10, narrow it down so that as the team moves on, you know, they've got very good parameters to work with when they start doing their research. In addition to that, so we did some wordsmith, names using these
Hmm.
tools, but
Yep.
then we also did visualization.
Hmm.
There's a lot of visualization tools available to marketers. My favorite one is the dot board, where you've taken your keywords,
Yeah.
you've come up with an enormous, and I mean enormous, it was like 6 feet by 4 feet, and you just put visuals against
Okay.
all of these words, right? And then you get your teams together and you give them power dots, red for oh no,
Yeah.
yellow for hey, maybe, and then green for okay, that looks like us.
Okay.
And then you ask everybody to go to the board one at a time and put their power dots on the visuals that they think represent the brand.
Oh.
So that's a lot of fun. So now you've got some word tools to
Yeah.
help you with the research. You've got some visual keys to help you with the research. And then we hosted a brainstorming session.
Okay.
So we really did utilize all the things that we had available to us to help us figure out where the rebranding really should go.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the brainstorming's fun. Even back then, it was at the very beginning of AI.
Okay.
And absolutely, I'm like, I got to know what's AI going to say
Right.
versus what are we coming up with off the top of our heads. So that was pretty fun too. And
Okay.
I got to be honest, we outsmarted AI.
Yeah. We love outsmarting
Yay!
AI stories, right? Yeah.
Yay, team.
Yes.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it was our executive creative director, Mary Olivieri, who came up with 2.718. She found it in her research,
Hmm.
and we pretty much fell in love with it right away,
Yeah.
particularly once the story fell in line with exactly what we were trying to create for our clients.
Right. No, I loved
So
it because
lots of process.
lots of process. No, but I love it because people don't think about that there is a process behind the naming, right? It's like, oh, well, let's just sit down in a room and throw out a bunch of names kind of a thing. And it's not. It's
No,
like you said, starting with the end game. It's playing off of characteristics that are associated with your organization. There's a lot of things, and then you can even group them into categories. Do we want a name that talks about how we want to make people feel, or is it about the result that we deliver? Is it about our process? Where do we want to brainstorm in order to come up with that perfect name? So I
you
love what you
are
talk about.
You are absolutely right. We did categorize the different characteristics of the brand. And that's when that prioritization exercise came in, where, we decided, okay, we really need to narrow it down to make maybe these top 5 categories before we
Yeah.
start our research. So that's a
Okay.
great point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
absolutely.
No, I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit now about you've rebranded and another couple years go by. How did that whole decision about selling the agency occur? And then what role did the brand play in the sale of the agency? Because I know you and I talked beforehand and you said it was so important for you to find the right buyer. So kind of walk me through that process.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. Why would somebody decide to sell their business when A, you're having fun, you're being successful, and you've got a relatively new brand to play with, right?
Yeah.
And we were, the new brand name was doing exceedingly well. The stories we got to tell, went deeper into being able to talk about what we were actually doing for clients in certain industries. So everything was humming along pretty great. What happens is time catches up with you,
Okay.
or at least time was catching up with me.
Yeah.
I hope I don't look it, but believe it or not, I was pushing retirement, right?
Okay. And you do
And
not look it.
Ah, you're the best.
Yeah.
So over that time, I mean, even before I rebranded the agency, my other partners had retired. So I had bought them all out and was kind of the last one standing, if you will. And
Hmm.
like I said, was doing well, having fun, loved my team, had great, smart people to work with, but just knew that eventually, you know, I should probably think about, my next chapter.
Yeah. Okay.
I honestly thought it was going to take quite a bit of time to sell the agency. I'd never sold a business before. I didn't know really what the market conditions were like.
Hmm.
You always anticipate the worst, right?
Yeah.
This is going to take a long time. It's going to have a very long lead time or sales cycle. You're going to need to put a lot into this. So I just was giving myself, every advantage that I thought I could.
Hmm.
I definitely hired a broker to help me
Okay.
with all of this. So that was great. We were able to kind of, to your point, make sure that there were processes in place, knew what we were going to measure. And like you mentioned, I was very specific with his help determining who I wanted to sell to
Yeah.
or what their characteristics were. Like
Okay.
all the work I had just done with my own brand was the same work that I wanted to do vetting a potential buyer,
Yep.
right? And top of my list was culture. I know to a lot of CMOs out there, or maybe even other CEOs, that might fall a little further down.
Hmm.
You might be looking for a company that has the same amount of longevity
Yeah.
and the same amount of momentum and the same kind of premier brand names you have.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, those were all extremely important because they would definitely, prelude success.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, my people came first. I wanted to make sure that they would be happy, that they would be supportive, that it would be a soft landing for
Yep.
them. Because this, I knew from the get go, I was about to turn their worlds upside down.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, they were all starting new jobs.
Hmm.
And honestly, I lost a lot of sleep over that.
Yeah.
I just hated that I was going to have to put them through that. So that's why culture came to the top of my list when I was looking at potential buyers.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that because there's a lot of founders who look at it and put people first, and some of them go the ESOP route, right? So instead of
Yep.
having someone else come in and redo everything or potentially change everything, let me sell it to the people who helped bring me here and or help, the business get here kind of a thing. So I love that it's heartening that you can say my people are first, but still find a buyer, where it makes it easier for you to go through that transition, knowing that your people are cared for. But also you spent so much time, energy, and effort building such a wonderful brand. You don't want to see it erode or get destroyed or get replaced or things like that. It's validation for what you've done, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit all of the big key points that kind of go into, how do you consider doing this and to whom? And I would say that I got fortunate.
Hmm.
There's an individual that I had known who had a larger agency than I did. And we were just kind of colleagues, right?
Yep.
We would get together for lunch every now and then and just kind of talk about how's business, what's going on. And we talked a lot about our internal processes. How often do you hold town hall meetings? How often are you meeting with key executives? How often are you meeting with junior up and comers?
Right.
So we just had a great mindset about how you actually go about doing business and being successful.
Yeah.
And of course, she knew what I was up to. And one day at lunch, she said to me, "Well, I think I'm interested." And I was like, "I would love to talk further about this."
Right.
And it did. It turned out to be such a great fit. So I guess an important point to all of this for founders and CEOs and everyone else in your organization, if you're considering an exit strategy, is make sure that your networking is strong.
Oh,
I had never considered that before until this was the process that
yeah.
actually worked for me. And when you think about it, that's how people get the best jobs. That's
Right.
how people find, the best thoughts that are out there and continue to grow their skill sets. So
Right.
at the end of the day, kind of looking back, it just made sense to me that I was very pleased that networking became a great investment in my time.
I like that. That's a great piece of advice for, yeah, founders looking at potential exit strategies. And, like you said, you knew before you were going to sell your organization that it was going to be a process and take some time, but you knew you also had the processes and things in place that made your company valuable and worth buying to someone else. And I know some founders wait until the last minute and then say, okay, I'm done. I want to sell. I want to sell now. But I like what you're talking about. It's building up a network that you could possibly sell your business to takes time, as anything does with a relationship. And so I like that you gave that advice to people to start working on that now. So,
And I
um,
will tell you, in my experience, here were the key things that a buyer was looking for.
okay.
The buyer definitely wanted the premier brand names that we had to offer, which was great. But even the non-premier brand names that we had were strong mid-cap companies, and we had longevity against all of these clients. And I know how hard that is today, particularly if you're an agency owner. You lose relationships, new VPs come into play,
Right.
new CMOs come into play. The teams on the corporate side change pretty
Every two
frequently.
years, practically. Yeah. Yeah.
Just about, and a
Yeah.
lot of corporations, they just like to switch it up. There's
Right.
a very large financial services company that we were working with, and that was one of their hallmarks, that every couple of years they just moved people to totally different divisions, kind of like I did when I was young. Okay, I know direct marketing, now I want to go learn shopper marketing.
Yeah.
They would move people out of marketing and move them into a completely different division.
Hmm.
So you're starting over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely they are looking for, the great names, but more importantly, probably what's the longevity of the relationship? And of course, what kind of revenue and what kind of margins are you able to produce from these relationships?
Right.
So that was kind of primarily on their mind. Secondarily, what's on their mind is your leadership team,
Hmm.
and are they going to stay?
Yeah.
So when I told you all earlier that I was really focused on culture, that's why.
Yeah.
I wanted everybody to stay. I wanted
Exactly.
our clients to continue the same relationship at the same level of service, and not feel like they were going to get a whole new team.
Yeah.
So they're going to interview your executives. They're going to want to talk to them about what they want out of a new owner, what they want out of a position with the new company. So
Yeah.
all of that is going to happen. And guess what? You're not going to be involved in some of that.
Yeah.
So if you're a control freak, and I learned not to be a control freak,
Yeah.
that's a little scary, having other people, talk to your
Talk to your
team and
leadership
kind,
team. Hmm.
kind of get intimate with how they work and what they're thinking.
Right, right. No, excellent. Excellent advice. So we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I do want to talk about your podcasts because I really, really
Aw,
love the story behind both of the podcasts that you host, but it's another rebranding story in a way because Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women, you had that podcast before, right? And then you were able to repurpose it once you sold the company. So maybe tell us a little bit about what each podcast, what the themes, the
yeah,
topics are, and then how you repurposed Kick-Ass
absolutely.
Women.
We'll start with Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women.
Yeah.
So if you haven't guessed by now, it was a woman-owned agency. We were women-owned, right? And so when it came to like the milestones of being in business, we wanted to give back. Mostly we wanted to give back to the younger generation of, the next generation of leaders, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things we realized early on is that when we were coming up in the business, there was no place to just go get great advice. You might have one mentor. If you're lucky, you had two, but there wasn't a resource to just go out and be able to hear,
Hmm.
what other women particularly, thought that you needed to know as you grew in your business and in your skill sets.
Yeah.
So that was the notion. That was kind of the mission vision, right?
Yeah.
So we started out at like every 5 year, our 5th year milestones, we would produce this absolutely gorgeous book. We would ask a simple question. Like the first book was, what would you tell your scrappy 20-year-old self, right?
Right.
And we would go out and we would find kick-ass women from all walks of life, right?
Okay.
From all different industries. And they would answer the question. And then we would put it to very gorgeous artwork.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, what we had was a pretty gorgeous, almost cocktail table worthy book of great quotes and advice from women. And because it was, the digital era, we made it an ebook and we sent it out to everyone. So
Yeah.
that was the impetus for Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women. And when I sold the agency, I always knew I wanted to do more with that brand. So I didn't sell that brand. And that's something else to kind of consider. Is there something, in your portfolio that's just like so personal, you don't want that to be part of the sale.
Right.
So when I finally retired from marketing after the business had been sold and stabilized, I decided to take Words of Wisdom from Kick-Ass Women to the next level, and that's when I started the podcast. And now we're starting a newsletter, and hopefully we'll do some e-commerce. And my hope is by the end of the year to grow into a charitable component to go along with the brand.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it's evolving nicely.
Yes. I love that story. Yep.
And then very quickly, I'll tell you about B2B
Yeah.
Noble.
Yep.
So I have a brother, Mark Brohan, who has been in the e-commerce space since its inception. And
Okay.
he has more of a global brand than I do. He kind of trots around the world talking about e-commerce. He does a lot of research on e-commerce. And he said to me, boy, I'd really like to grow my platform in a different way.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you need a podcast.
You need a
And
podcast.
you
Yes.
need a podcast. And
Yeah.
he said, well, I'm only going to do it if you'll do it with me, which was very
Nice.
sweet of him. He
Yeah.
didn't need me, but that was very sweet of him. So we kind of worked through the same process. The first thing we wanted to find was clear space.
Okay.
And we understand what thought leadership is all about.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I would listen in on webinars or I would read other people's blogs or articles, they got pretty technical, right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if I'm a marketing manager, I just want people to strip all that down and tell me what are the most important things I need to be concerned about and how do I articulate it and take it to my leadership team.
Got
So
it.
that's why we came up with No Bull, right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
stripped out all the jargon, we stripped out all the acronyms. We just try to tell it like it is in language that we all can take up the food chain.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Excellent. All right. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you for hours. Just love what you have to say about branding and rebranding and selling your business. But I do want to end the episode if you're up for it. I like to honor a small business that is just doing a great job with their branding and their marketing. And if would ask if you would potentially want to nominate someone that we could give a shout out to.
So you like small businesses,
Small or
right?
mid, small to mid-size. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole kind of entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah, founders, because my passion is every time I would go to a conference about branding, it's like they talk about what Apple does and what Nike does or Mercedes. And it's like,
Right.
wait, what about the companies that are starting to scale, between, at the 1 million mark or at the 20 million mark? They're never going to use those branding models at the large corporate size. So who's doing a great job here? I want to give them a shout out and show that there are inspirational stories at their level.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. And quite honestly, I could start naming lots of them, but I think what I'll do
Yeah.
is I'll lean in to the company that is actually producing my podcast, and
Oh.
that's Flint Rock. Flint Rock is founded by Meg Goodman.
Oh.
Again, another marketing executive who, decided her second chapter was going to be she'd founded a multimedia firm.
Hmm.
So not only is she doing podcasts at Flint Rock, they go out and they conduct webinars. They're at conferences, absolutely, filming everything, putting together multimedia presentations. They're just an amazing engine that could.
Mm.
And I'm very proud to be associated with them and very excited to see all the success that they've gained in the few years that they've been in business.
Excellent. I love that one. Thank you. So, Liz, thank you for spending so much time with me today and sharing all, your rebranding stories and talking about the sale of your business. But if any of our listeners would like to learn more about you or learn more about the podcast, how can they find information about that?
I think the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm Liz Brohan. I'm pretty easy to find. Both the podcasts are there, and you can go directly to their pages. They have their own LinkedIn pages. And of course, you can probably find either one of the podcasts on all the social media channels and platforms.
Yes.
But yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me, and I hope you do, because I need to talk to all of you, just like Sue does
Yeah.
on the podcast. So any podcast you're interested in, I would love to hear from you.
I love that. Before you go, I want to leave you with an exercise to determine if you have a brand gap that could impact the valuation of your business. Liz talked about a powerful exercise, asking her team and clients to describe her firm in one word. So here's your homework. This week, reach out to 5 to 10 people, some clients, a couple of colleagues, and ask them, if you had to describe my business in 2 or 3 words, which would you choose? Then compare those answers to the words you usually use to describe your company. The gap between what you intend the brand to be and what people actually experience and say about you, that's that brand gap. And if you're thinking about selling your business someday and that gap is a little too large, that's exactly what a buyer is going to see too. If you need help identifying if you have a brand gap or what to do about it if you do, let's chat. My contact info is in the show notes below. Anyway, thank you again, Liz. This has been so much fun for me, and I hope for you as well.
My pleasure. I had a great time.
Excellent. Perfect. And thank all of you for joining us in this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed it, I would love if you could help me build a strong brand following for this show. Please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.